We are thrilled to have on today Dr. Maureen Lamb on the show. She is a leading voice at the Bloomington Drosophila Stock Center. She's going to tell us all about what that is and what goes on there. Not only does she help oversee the world's largest repository of fruit fly stocks, which support groundbreaking biological and biomedical research, but she also leads cutting edge studies on how fasciclin and prostaglandins regulate the mechanics of cell migration. Her work has shed light on the mechanisms of how cells move together, and that has given insights on how these resonate with development from disease.
Science is for everyone, all backgrounds, all ages, all genders, and all walks of life deserve an education.
Dr. Lamb, welcome on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited.
We're so excited to have you on. Like I've mentioned, we are a fruit fly loving community. We've actually got emojis about fruit flies and redemptions on fruit flies. We had an art competition back in January on fruit flies and talking about their genetics. So we've actually worked through and looked at y'all's website and even given folks a walkthrough on how to order fruit flies, like the different the different mutants. So could you give us a little background as to, how did you get into working at the Fly Stock Center, and what does that look like? What is a day at the Stock Center? Why is it important, and why is it, important to even know about for your everyday folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, the Bloomington Drosophila Stock Center, or what we call the BDSC, because it's much shorter to say, is the world's largest collection of fruit flies. And not only are we the largest fruit fly stock center in the world, we're also the oldest stock center of these flies. And what we really do, our main focus is we collect strains of fruit flies from scientists around the world, and we maintain them. And then we enable them to be distributed to new scientists around the world by shipping them to universities and scientists all over the world. And you actually asked an interesting question: what does a day at the Stock Center look like? And I am fairly new to the Stock Center. I've been here about a year and a half, and I remember asking that very question when I interviewed for this position, and everyone said it just changes every day. And you know what? They're right. um, Caring for the flies is an everyday task, but that is done by a group of our amazing, wonderful stock keepers. But for the scientists like myself, we just handle all the other things that pop up and all the other tasks that need to be dealt with. And so our day-to-day, week-to-week itineraries really do change. But as for my responsibilities, I largely take care of curating new stocks. And so what that means is a researcher develops a new mutation or creates a new fly and they want to donate it to the stock center. I'm the person they contact and we communicate about the stock, and they send it to me, and then I get it integrated into our collection and then put up on that website that you guys have looked at to be able to be purchased.
Could you talk a little bit about why this is so important to be able to have? Like, what is the benefit of having this repository? And then we've gotten questions from the community of, is there a way that folks can support the mission of the Stock Center?
Yeah, absolutely. So why it seems crazy. Why are all these little fruit flies so important? And I think to best answer that question, we need to think of first about like why do we care about fruit flies? And I've tuned in a little bit prior to coming on, and I know you've talked about this, but
You got to see all the
fruit flies have
chaos.
a little bit. It's intense. I applaud you for navigating all of this. Um, so fruit flies been a credible tool to study all aspects of human health and human development. And so fruit flies are actually one of the most understood multicellular organisms that we have. Earlier last year, the entire fruit fly brain was completely mapped. So all 140,000 neurons were completely assembled and mapped in the human or the fruit fly brain, which encompasses about 54 million connections between these neurons. And that just really highlights how well we understand this really complex organism, even though it's really small. And the reason we understand it so well is that we've been working with fruit flies as a research organism for like over a century now. Our grandfather, fruit flies, Thomas Hunt Morgan, started in fruit fly research in 1906. So we've been going at this for a while. So we have so many strains of fruit flies, and what has really attracted people to using these flies is, one, there's a lot of practical reasons. One, they're small. We can keep millions and millions and millions of flies in tiny vials in really small spaces. They're really cheap to keep. They eat really cheap food. They don't take a lot of materials. And then, really importantly, they have a fast life cycle. And as you know, in science, getting things done is important. So their life cycle from being born or egg laying to an adulthood is like 10 days to 14 days. For a mouse, that's like 3 months. So if you want to get out of graduate school, that matters. And so I think over the years, those have made it really attractive to people who want to do research, these like practical reasons. But also, fruit flies share a lot of DNA and genetic material with humans. We have over half of our genes in humans are shared in fruit flies. It's an estimate that 75% of genes that cause diseases in humans have an equivalent in a fruit fly. And so, what is really important is that we have this great system that's been developed for decades and decades and decades that has really strong tools that have been developed for decades and that we can use to understand a lot of aspects of human disease.
And yeah, like a neat thing you said, it's not just like the 3 months to get from like for the adult mouse, but for a fruit fly to aging it, right? If you wanted to study anything aging related, a couple
Right,
of weeks you have an old fly versus years for the
absolutely.
mouse. Um,
Right, you can study from birth to death very easily. And yeah, a mouse is years in the lab. So you can watch a big thing in flies is neurodegeneration. You can watch as those diseases progress over the lifetime of a fly very easily.
so Maureen, we've got right now over 130 people from all over the world watching and learning about the Stock Center,
Hello.
and we've already got questions coming in. And I guess the
Cool.
first one is, do you breed the fruit flies there? So when you get one of these lines or one of these stocks from these researchers, do you just store it in alcohol? What do you do? And so, we know the answer of like how you of the breeding program, I guess, basically that you've got in place. What does one do? Like, how does that look? How do you keep them alive? And then
Yeah.
from another community member is how do you prevent inbreeding if you're trying to keep them all identical?
Yeah. So how do we keep them alive? They are just stored. They're kept alive, and that's a really important aspect to fruit fly biology. A lot of different model organisms, mice, for example, you can actually freeze down sperm and embryos of mice and then thaw them back out. You can't freeze fruit flies and then thaw them later for use, so we have to keep them alive. And so they're kept in tiny glass vials with food in them. And the adults in there they mate, they lay eggs, and those eggs produce larvae that crawl up the sides of the vial. And then on the sides of the vial, they will pupate or form like a cocoon, like a butterfly does. And in there, they'll undergo metamorphosis and turn into a fly. And then from that, we have a whole new population of flies that is the exact same as the last population. And we flip them or transfer them into a new vial and we start the cycle all over again.
And so when
And
you
that's
get you get these flies from that researcher, right?
mhm,
Who sends you like, hey, I made this thing. And so let's say you got it 50 years ago. You're
yep,
still transferring it 50 years on
absolutely. And
because you
I
can't
hope
freeze
you
them.
don't, yes, I
Yeah.
hope you don't mind. I did bring a guest with me today. I brought my favorite fly stock. I went and grabbed it before the interview.
No, please, yeah, tell
This
us what makes it a favorite.
this is The genotype here, I don't know if I can get it up here. It's fly stock 145. Um, the genotype is white 1. It is the mutant that was first discovered by Thomas Hunt Morgan in his lab. And so this essentially is the stock that's been being maintained since 1906
Wow,
ish.
is that the oldest fly line that y'all have at the stock center?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, and
Yeah.
it's still used in research today, right?
Yeah, and it's actually still ordered quite a bit.
And it's
And so
still
we've been transferring these flies to new food. Someone has.
for over 100 years, and it's still being ordered. And Maureen, what's for the folks at home? What's special about it? What does this W mean on there?
Yeah, so the W stands for white, like the color white. And in Drosophila, we named it's the gene. The gene is called white. And we name genes after what phenotype or what they look like when we mutate them. If we disrupt the gene, what does the fly look like? And so when you disrupt this gene, the fly has white eyes. Typically, fruit flies have red eyes. And so this is one of the first kind of genes identified in fruit flies. It's still widely used kind of as an identifier or a marker in flies. So the W is white, and the little one indicates that the white is mutated. And so these flies all have white eyes, but you certainly won't be able to see that.
A question from the chat, Maureen, is there a particular species that is being utilized at the stock center for all of these mutants? And how was that
Yeah,
decided, if we know?
that's a great question. We exclusively have Drosophila melanogaster. So that is one species of fruit fly, and that's the only thing we house. There is a Drosophila species stock center at Cornell, I believe, and they house different species of Drosophila. So if you wanted to look at a lot of species of Drosophila, that's where you would go. And we work really hard to make sure no other species shows up around here because we do have visitors every once in a while. Um,
And so you have how many now? Like we had been watching a video earlier from Indiana University, of like a walk through the stock center, and it mentioned 50,000 lines. Like, do you have an estimate of how many y'all are having?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually checked this morning just for you. As of this morning, the number of stocks we have available is 93,335.
There's 93,000 variants of Drosophila melanogaster with different genetic tools plugged in and removed at this stock center.
Absolutely. And the fun fact is that we have 93,000 plus different stocks, but we actually keep them in duplicate because of redundancy and safety. If the building I'm in were to suddenly implode, we would want another copy somewhere else. So we have another copy of the whole 93,000 collection across campus. And
So
so
what is
all of our efforts here are duplicated
what
across campus.
what does it mean that that you're keeping them? So do you find as like one set of tubes, is that a one individual set and then another duplicate of tubes elsewhere on campus, and that presumably is to ensure if there was any, like, the building set on fire or the electricity went out, that everything would be maintained?
Exactly.
Has anything like that
Exactly.
ever happened? Do you know, like, historically?
No, like nothing that catastrophic, but there's been times where, one of our stock keepers, trips and they break this. These are glass, these vials right here.
Uh-huh.
And so when we have a duplicate, we just go over and get that one and make more vials of it. So we haven't lost large amounts. That is worst case scenario, obviously, and we pray and hope that never happens. But on a or a stock gets sick. Fruit flies do get sick. They get bacterial infections. Sometimes they get fungal, like fungus growing in them and stuff. And so it's really nice to have our backup copy so that we can go and get some flies that probably aren't sick and bring them over to replace it.
There's a question in the chat, Maureen, is if you had one die, so let's say if there was like this infection that happened and it wiped out one of the lines, can you clone or remake that line? Is that something that y'all do, or is that would be back, trying to go back to the original donator? What would be, I guess, the process if you ended up losing a line just to sickness or heaven forbid, lightning struck both of those vials at the two locations?
Yeah. It really, really depends on what it is. You're right on the money. We could absolutely ask the donor. A lot of them keep it after they give it to us. So we could ask the donor. There are stocks we have that could be remade easily by recloning them. We could ask someone who's bought the stock. We've done that before. Hey, you bought this stock 2 months ago. Can we have a copy back? Can we have some flies back? Or we just get rid of it. We do get rid of stocks. We have to. We can't just keep growing. Like you said, you watched a video where we had 50,000. What I think you said 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
now we have 93. We can't just keep getting bigger. So we do call stocks. Um, and so that's part of the job as the scientists here is we kind of look at what the stock is, how it's been ordered, how much it's been used. Do we have other things in the collection that are similar to it that could be replaced or used in a similar manner? And that kind of determines how much effort we would go to replace it.
What determines whether or not you are going to take in a new stock? So if someone's like, hey, I made this fruit fly line, I want to contribute it to the center, what do you do in terms of evaluating whether or not you want to keep, like you said, you can't keep growing forever and ever in terms of just the keeping. What are the factors that you as a scientist look for on a stock that's going to be brought into the stock center?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, this is largely one of my responsibilities. So I first look at what they're offering and see if we already have it. Some people, a lot of times people are retiring. A professor's retiring, they're entering their career, and they're like, we have all of these stocks. And you can come back and say, like a bunch of these we actually already have. So we don't need those. And then for every gene in the genome of the fly, we like to have at least two mutations. So if they're offering a mutant in a gene, and we don't have any mutants, we're absolutely going to take that. Or if sometimes I'll look if they are offering a mutant in a gene and maybe we already have some, but the mutation they're offering is really well published. There's a lot of literature out there, a lot of papers, a lot of research being done on it. That's something we would want because one, we want to be able to, sell that stock, right? It's obviously popular, but we want to be able to provide it to the community, and we want to make sure that it's preserved for the community.
So is
And
this kind of like if I were studying a particular disease and a lot of people were studying this, and so you want more ways of testing if your hypothesis is correct for treatment of said disease or weird mutation that's transferable in humans, maybe?
yeah, absolutely. And if someone, like speaking of humans, if someone offers us something like very related to a human disease, we're probably going to take it. We are funded by the NIH, the National Institute of Health, partially. So we do focus on human disease. And so taking human disease related stocks, one, they're popular, they do get ordered and used quite a bit. And two, supports part of our mission.
Maureen, on that note, we've talked about here on the show about, funding cuts and budget cuts. Is there a way for folks to be able to donate directly to the stock center and help support the stock center? We've had that question come up several times over the years of what's the best way to support if I just want to donate directly.
Yeah. Um, so first I'll say we're okay. We are good. We Our funding comes 80% from our user fees, so people buy stocks, and 20% from our NIH grant. And last year we just got our 5-year grant renewed, so yay. Go team who wrote it. It wasn't me, but go team. Um, and as long as the NIH keeps doing what they said they'll do, we should be fine.
Okay, nice.
Um, Now, if So that's great for us.
Yep.
We are very fortunate, very lucky. If anyone wanted to give to the broader fly community, Flybase is the genetic database for Drosophilas. So all of the fruit fly genetic information is stored in a database called Flybase. And if you know anything about being in fly research, you know how valuable that tool is as a researcher. It's incredibly useful to have this. And their grant just got cut. So if you go to their website, flybase.org, there is a way to donate to them.
One question that we had too, Maureen, from earlier is, so you've that fly line that's been inbred for over 100 years. Do you have to do anything to keep it functional? As in, like, it being it inbred in any way, or is it just fine? Like, is it just running around and doesn't matter? It's with his sisters and brothers.
No, the fruit flies don't seem they don't care as much as humans do about all that. It is inbred. We just take whoever's in the vial and put them in a new vial to mate and lay eggs. The only concern, some of the concerns in more of a genetic perspective, is they'll what we call accumulate lethals. They'll accumulate mutations as they sit around on the shelves for decades and decades and decades, and that can be problematic. But usually it can be solved. But they'll accumulate a mutation that is lethal, or it'll kill the fly if they have two copies of it. But this stock, no, I mean, it is just fine. I don't think you guys can see it, but they're running around. They're perfectly happy in there.
It's just so cool that you can look over at your desk and be like, yeah, this originally from 1906.
Yeah. It definitely, I constantly have fruit flies just sitting around on my desk. So
Do you have another favorite line in terms of genetic mutation that you just think is really, really cool?
Really, really cool.
And it could be biased against your work. That's totally fine.
Yeah, I guess I could. So I worked on a protein called FASN in my PhD, but in flies, this is the coolest thing about flies, in my opinion, is we're fun. And we give genes fun names. In humans, the gene's called fasten because it actually fastens two scaffolding structures together. That's boring. In flies, it's called singed because the little bristles on the back of a fruit fly, when fasten is mutated, when singed is mutated, it looks like they've gotten burned and they're like singed and they're all like curled up and gnarled.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's the protein I worked on in terms of understanding cell migration. But it's a fun phenotype to see, and I really like how we give flies fun names. So
we've talked about some of our favorites on the stream before. Kenny, after the South Park short-lived one, is always a fun one, or Red Shirt as well for the Star Trek reference. There's a lot of good names out there of the fruit fly mutants. Methuselah. Ken Barbie.
Is a good one. Yeah.
For those who don't know, could you give us, Maureen, a visual of what, just to illustrate to us what Ken Barbie would look like if you're looking under the microscope?
Ken and Barbie mutants don't have any external genitalia. And so that is why they're named Ken and Barbie. Yes.
Like on the figurine.
Yeah, like on the little dolls. Yes. But there's also there's fun ones like Hippo, because when it's mutated, the flies get all like big and wrinkly, and
Sonic Hedgehog after the video game character we've talked a lot about here. There's some creativity in there too. Sometimes we defer back to what the established name is, but other times we're able to have some fun.
I just got a stock in a couple months ago, and so the fun thing is if there's genes in the Drosophila genome that are what we call unannotated. We don't know what they do. They don't have names yet. And when someone figures out what they do, you get to name it, and that's really cool. And I think it's like the lifelong dream of any fly researcher. I'd love to be able to name a gene. And so this group of researchers identified this gene that affects social networking behavior in flies. And they named it Kevin Bacon because, like, the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon theory, which I think is really funny.
Uh, well done on them. That's a good one. I was like, is this a
Yeah,
dancing footloose reference? No, I like
yeah,
that theory.
yeah.
Yeah. So Maureen, too, you mentioned that the daily life of the stock center. There's the stock keeping, so you have to feed the animals food, right?
Mhm.
How often do you have to feed 93,000 lines of fruit fly? And that, right, is multiplied by four for at least the four vials that each one encompasses. So let's just say, like being, 400,000 tubes.
Yeah. So the four, it's actually really two. Each bundle, this bundle is like a set.
Okay.
Um, so this bundle gets fed every 2 weeks.
And is this by
Um,
hand or a
it's
machine?
by hand. So this copy will get fed every 2-ish weeks, plus or minus a few days, because it's by hand. It's a human. And then the same copy over at the other location across campus will also get fed every 2 weeks. And yeah, we have human stock keepers who do this, and there are robots, for those who are wondering, who flip fruit flies. And there's some cool videos if everyone wants to see. You can Google, robot flipping fruit fly machine. I've seen them. I used to work somewhere that had one. But we use people because they're better.
What
And
makes
it's
them better? Like, what is the decision
um,
making process there?
a lot of ways. The you know they can look at stocks and make better decisions about them. They look at them and they have a bacterial infection, so we have some special food, if they're sick. So they can look at the stock and know, oh, it needs to be on, pen strep food, or it's getting weak and it needs to be on some other special food, or it just doesn't look right and something's going on, or, oh my goodness, this file only has male fruit flies in it, which is not helpful for making more fruit flies. So, like, having that human aspect to be able to sit and be like, as they flip, making some judgment calls about how the fruit flies are looking is really helpful. Robots don't do that. Robots also lead to some contamination issues because they'll open up the vials and flip them, but flies tend to fly out and fly in.
Hmm.
And as you can imagine, different flies flying into a stock is a big problem. And different flies flying around is a big problem. So
For
we
the folk,
find that
yeah,
go ahead.
for the folks at home, how do you account for contamination? And what does, I guess, contamination look like in this settings? Because folks might not know, but like, right, every single fly tube, those individuals don't all look the same between tubes. Some have a visual
Right.
mutation, like you mentioned, like that singed look that you were
Mm-hmm.
working on, or the white eyes. How are you able to tell what it's labeled is what is actually in there and prevent that contamination from happening?
Right. So a lot of what, like you said, a lot of it is a visual marker. Um, so we do have a quality control program that goes through a little bit and looks and makes sure, this stock looks visually like it's supposed to. So a lot of our stocks do have those visual markers that we can tell, but we also rely on our users a lot. They write in and say, hey, I bought this stock. It's not working like it's supposed to. It's not doing this. It's not doing that. Or I sequenced it and it doesn't have this mutation. And we can't often ever figure out what caused it to happen. Was it contamination? Was it bad when we got it? But those are really the methods we rely on, because We do not have the capacity having 184,000 copies of stocks to run a full scale quality control program.
Right. So maybe you would, and even just like the flipping and looking at them day to day, right? You can't put each one under the microscope and test,
No,
but you can
no,
maybe by eyes see, okay, this is supposed to have white eyes.
absolutely.
If you see red eyes in there, something's
That's a
gone.
problem.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Something's gone array. And but you can look at the backup line and see if that one still has the wide eyes and presumably replace things. So you're able to keep that in mind, right? And keep tabs on what's what.
Exactly, exactly. And it has to be usually something pretty simple because our quality control, the large majority of it is done by our stock keepers who aren't scientists. They are regular people, regular, and so we have to train them to be able to see easy things to pick up on. So red eye, wide eye, great, super easy to see. So
So
uh,
you mentioned that there's the stock keepers who aren't necessarily trained originally as scientists, and then there's you who's gone through graduate school, right? The whole rigmarole, Dr. Maureen that we've got on. What is your added or like I guess different responsibility in the lab? Do you get to conduct experiments? What is it that you get to do in the stock center?
yeah, so I don't actually take care of any flies. The stock keepers actually get to do that. I do a lot of the curation. It takes a lot more time than one would think. Writing, getting all the information about the stocks, details, and everything figured out. I also answer all the questions on our email account that has is for Drosophila related questions. So when people write in and say, like I said before, this stock's not behaving like it's supposed to, I'm the one who kind of reads that and communicates with them and tries to figure out what's going on. We have high schoolers and undergrads who write in who are doing kind of science fair projects. And so I help them guide them through how to go about that or just other questions about Drosophila. And then in experiments, I do get to do a little bit of fly pushing, and that's what we call it when we put the flies on those pads and look at them under the microscope. We do have a small research program that we run through the Stock Center, and it's almost entirely focused on improving and expanding the use of the stocks we already have. And so I'm working on right now generating some lines that can be used to map mutations. We have some other people who are working on different ways to label things with fluorescent drivers. So,
So
um,
when you're having to custom build these, meaning that you're taking this fruit fly line that has mutation X and then this other one that has Y, and you're trying to get a certain combo put together so that you can whatever goal is that you're trying to track.
absolutely, we put specific male, specific female, put them together, pray, hope, sit around, and wait till they make progeny, and you hope they're the right progeny that come out. And yeah, that's most of the research that goes on. Every once in a while, we'll do like a PCR or something fancy, but we don't get too fancy here. We
So
mostly
were
do
we one
flies.
of your weirdest emails of the year so far of like, hey, you want to come on a Twitch stream?
No,
No, it was okay, good.
I'm trying to think. Do we get a lot of weird emails? Um, Someone wanted to make like really strong fruit flies once.
Okay, so
Okay,
that was actually a
why?
question in the chat. That was actually a
Was it
question
really?
before you came on. That was a question if you could make a really strong fruit fly. So what does one say to that?
um, I think so. Fruit flies are used in exercise science. I can tell you that. There's actually a really cool group up in Detroit, I think, somewhere in Michigan, who's doing using fruit flies to understand exercise and training and how that progresses, and actually how they exercise fruit flies, this is pretty funny, is they take the vial and they tap it down, and so all the fruit flies fall to the bottom. And then all the fruit flies, they um, have a tendency, a natural instinct to go up, to run up. So you tap them all down, and then they run up the sides of the vial, and then you tap them down again. And you do this for hours. So they're just running up the sides of the vial, and that's how they exercise them. So I think you can improve endurance and things like that. I don't think you can make a really strong fruit fly, though.
It's not going to hulk out in any way.
No, I don't. Sadly, no. They're pretty confined to their exoskeleton. They're not going to get like swole or anything.
And then folks were wondering, so what are some of the challenges that you work with as well? So you mentioned like curing various, like, I guess, illnesses and things that come up, like with respect to infections. But I guess what are some of the difficulties that go into taking care of 93,000 lines, which it's just already, it's so imposing sounding, like if anything could go wrong, right? Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it does. It sounds overwhelming to take care of that. But the easiest thing is, the collection started with, I think like 1,800 lines were brought here. So it has been a very gradual increase. We got, we had 2,000 stocks, and then they had 10,000 stocks, and then they had 20,000 stocks. And so how we adapt to the expanding numbers has been gradual. It's just, we weren't just handed 93,000 stocks. That would have been a nightmare. The challenges, let me think of some of the challenges we have. Mites. Fruit flies get things called mites. They're like they're tinier insects that live on tiny fruit flies. I kind of think of them as fruit fly lice almost. They're not good to have in your fruit fly stock. They make the fruit flies sad and weak. So we work really hard to keep our stocks mite free. And thankfully, knock on wood, rub your lucky charm, we haven't had a mite outbreak since 2011. But
how does one prevent that? Like, what are the practices that one has to do to prevent something like that from happening?
Yeah, so the biggest thing we can do is flip the stocks, put them into their new vials when they're supposed to be, every 2 weeks, not keep them in their old vials. The flies will clean off the mites off themselves, and getting them away from vials that have mites in it. That's a big thing. We keep the workstations where the stock keepers work really clean. After a stock keeper is done, they like wipe everything down, we vacuum it up. And then we have some stuff we call mite cloths. It's like actual cheesecloth is what it is. And it's soaked in a pesticide type thing that deters mites. And so we keep that in the trays where we keep all the stocks, which I sent you pictures of the trays. But
we've got them whenever we want to walk through those too.
Yeah. But yeah, we keep it at the bottom of the trays so that deters mites. But and then I think one of the biggest things is whenever we get new stocks, if someone sends us a stock to be in the collection, they actually go through a quarantine protocol, which is they go live in quarantine, which is in a different floor in a different room for 6 weeks. And they get special treatment there, and they don't get to leave that room until we are sure they do not have mites. And then they're allowed to be into the collection.
So there's a lot of protective measures in place to prevent that from something randomly coming in.
Yeah, it's a bit of work, but it saves us a whole lot of headache.
Yeah.
Actually getting mites.
Do you? So I know, Maureen, you weren't there when the last outbreak was in 2011. What does that? Can you describe to us what that would look like? Like, what is the amount of work that would go into getting rid of an outbreak of all those lines? Like, I can't even imagine how one would.
I shudder to think about it.
Okay, yeah, fair. Me too. Me too.
It's a lot of extra flipping. Like more than you would normally do. There is a little bit of, like, a drug we can put into the vials to help get rid of the mites. Um, and then just like a whole lot of documentation to make sure everything that's done is written down so that me, 13, 14 years later, knows what happened to this stock. Um, and so, yeah, that would be a great question for someone who was here at the time, but I feel like they don't like to talk about it.
Maureen, it's fair to say that people order worldwide, right? Like all over the world, y'all
Absolutely.
ship to, and these are
Yeah,
studied in pretty much every fly lab who studies Drosophila melanogaster, which is the species represented here, will order from y'all at some point.
absolutely. I think last year we shipped to 50 different countries in the world.
Wow.
We
Do
sent
you have
shipments.
a guess as to how many orders were shipped?
I have that number. Let's see. We shipped to 955 different institutions, universities, or schools. So that multiple orders to each of those, but and then we shipped 156,000 vials.
Wow.
So that's about 3,200 vials a week we ship
A
out.
week, wow.
Yeah, and
So
so yeah,
what
it's a big process to ship them out.
could you walk us through what is that like? If I go onto the website now and I'm like, I'm gonna order a fly line today, what does that look like on y'all's end? What does that entail?
Yeah, absolutely. So, not to burst your bubble, but first you have to have an account with us, and we only ship flies to schools, universities, institutions. You have to be a research organization. If you want flies at your house, go to the supermarket, I guess. We don't ship them to people's houses. But yeah, if any of your users, if you're a high school student, a middle school student, go talk to your science teacher. They can absolutely make an account with us, and we will send them flies. But you order flies, and we twice a week we print out a list of all the stocks that were ordered, and we have lots of stocks that are ordered many, many times each week, right? They're really popular. They get ordered tons. And our stock keepers, this is another part of their job, they go and they grab the stock from the collection like this, and they take flies that are in here and they flip them out to a different vial. And it looks exactly the same, but instead of glass, it's plastic for obvious reasons because we're going to mail it and we don't want it to break. And then we put a little sticker on it that says the stock number. So when the person gets it, they know what number it is and what stock it is. And then I wish I had a good picture of it. Um, there's this room we call the packing room where we have all the vials lined up in numerical order. So it's not by order. It's just like stock one through stock, 100,000, whatever. And they go through and they grab them and put them in boxes and put the labels on them, and we ship them out twice a week. And so we try our best to flip them and put them in their little plastic shipping vials a little early. Fruit flies, the adults don't always make it through the mail. They will usually die, but the larvae or the eggs, they survive. They're much, much tougher. And so some of our customers will get vials and they have no living adult flies, but the little larvae will crawl up and pupate and then turn into adults.
And that's to be expected, right? If you're shipping in the summer in some countries or the winter to others, like, I
Yeah,
mean, your bet is probably the adults are not going to survive, right? Because it's like
right.
the
And
rapid,
things,
yeah.
yeah, they're living insects, so they get hung up in customs a lot. So yeah, shipping in summer or not even our summer, other people's summer. Uh, yeah, it's tough, but luckily the larvae are quite tough, and they'll survive. I've gotten vials that literally had like little ice crystals inside the vial, and the larvae still made adults.
Wow. Okay,
I know.
so Maureen, if you get a vial with ice crystals in it, what do you like? Okay, the larvae are alive. What do you have to do to ensure they stay alive? right? Because it just seems like, oh God, should I warm them up? Should I put them into YouTube? Like,
Yeah, yeah. No, honestly, I didn't think they were alive. I put them down in quarantine because they were a new stock that had been shipped to us, and I was like, oh, I don't think they're gonna survive. We're gonna have to get these shipped again. And I came down a few days later, and they were like happily being flies.
that is
It's like,
amazing. Like, I just leave, forget for a few days. I'm like, wait a minute, they're fine. That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you mentioned customs. We actually had a question about that too in the chat of like, do you have to deal with permitting issues to be able to ship them out to different parts of the world, or is that more on the side of the lab? Like, how does something like that work? Presume there's a lot of USDA legal paperwork involved in this.
Yeah, so labs do send us import paperwork to get them into other countries. We have done we our head honcho here, Kevin Cook, has done a lot with the USPS, the USDA, Fish and Wildlife, to allow transport of live insects through the mail. He has been a driving force to promote this worldwide. And it's been incredible because it's really revolutionized being able to share Drosophila strains across the world to make sure they're not just limited to the United States and we can distribute these across the world. But yeah, it comes with a bit of paperwork, and sometimes they get hung up, and he is gracious enough to make phone calls for us to try to wiggle it loose. It just gets stuck places. But yes, that was all done prior, like early days of the stock center, and it's really incredible how big of an impact that's had on sharing it globally to make sure we can share these, and make sure everyone has access to them.
Absolutely. Maureen, thank you so much for your time today. This has been an absolute blast
Absolutely.
for answering the questions from the community. All of this for coming on to a Twitch stream to talk about the fruit fly stocks. And I don't know if that was on your bingo card for the year. Um,
Yes, yes, learning how to use Twitch was.
we really, really appreciate it. Is there anything that, like a parting thought that you want to impart on the community, or if folks have additional questions, is there any resource you would point towards, or honestly anything at all? The floor is yours.
um, well, I would just encourage everyone to keep being curious. I love that you're all out here just soaking up the knowledge. Keep loving science. I love that this is out here and everyone's just here to learn. So great job. Keep doing it. Um, and if you have any questions, you can email us. I'm always happy to answer fly questions. Um, the email is flystock@iu.edu. Um, and if you want just like general fly resources, the I'm blanking on the name of that site. Oh, Drosophila Workers Unite. It's a great little manual on all things fly and starting with flies.
Awesome. We've actually been posting all the resources that you've been mentioning onto our Discord server, with respect, and
Great.
we'll post that in as well, so folks can click on it after the show and be able to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to the Stock Center webpage, well, one thing, I think you guys would enjoy this. If you click on up at the top, care and information, I don't know if you've ever seen this.
I don't know. Let me. I'm pulling it up too now.
Okay.
So is it on
It's
the
just
main page?
Yeah, well, go to our main page and then click care and information.
Yep,
It's at the top.
got it.
And just wait.
Is it the fly?
Do you see them?
Yeah. It got me because we actually have fruit flies in the office today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh
if you
my
go to
God.
that page, there will be flies that fly onto the screen, and if you try to like shoo them away with your mouse, they fly away.
That is really clever. I can't wait I will pull it up on the big screen in just a second.
Yeah,
That is
and show everyone. But on that page, we also have something called Fly Resources, which is a great place to find more information.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so very much, Maureen. Honestly, this was a
Oh, it's great to be
blast.
here.
And again, for all of your knowledge, for answering our questions. We did have one silly question, maybe silly, possibly not, that we want to kind of round out on.
Okay,
Do y'all
no,
have
absolutely.
do you have any sales?
Oh, I think you cut
Oh,
out.
sorry. Do you have any sales like for Cyber Monday? Any deals?
No, we don't usually do sales. I'm sorry. Um, we don't. But you are certainly more than welcome to buy any flies if you are part of a school or an institute or something. But yeah, our flies don't go on sale.
There, they don't. You're changing the world one fly at a time. That doesn't needs to be a
Yeah.
sale, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Maureen, thank you again for all your time. If you ever want to come back on the stream, if you have any other anything that's upcoming, cool, or even just like, guys, we need some help with funding or anything, we'd love to have you on. So truly, thank you for your time and your expertise today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
This is for
Thank
everyone,
you.
all
Bye,
backgrounds, all
Maureen.
ages, all genders, and all walks of life deserve an education. Come be one of us.